you might be, all of us look at it in a different way. Whereas I think Asad brought the question back to the social outside very, very strongly. It's coming from an his purport was also that. If we ask the question of method, how can you avoid the social sciences or lived reality in a way? How to connect that with the question of method? What anyone else? For Achia?
Yes. Yeah, what I learned from your reply to me was that if you don't, preserve your artworks in a kind of linear framework and project them chronologically, then the meaning that you wanted to come out from that will get lost, right?
Slightly.
Yes.
Should I clarify?
Yeah, do.
Yeah. So, no, I think that, I see differently and I will try to clarify my position. So the traditional view on art was that art history is moving in a certain linear direction and there is a purpose to the art that we are seeing. So, for example, if just take the famous theory of Greenberg of flatness of painting. So if you look carefully at his writing, you will notice that he's not trying to conceive a new idea. He's only trying to emphasize something which started already, according to him, somewhere after the Renaissance and even during the Renaissance. So yes, for him, he was very modernist in his approach, and he was trying to draw a certain progress and development, that the combination, the peak of that development will be to recognize that the painting is flat and to show the two-dimensionality of the painting. That was this is the classical modernist approach. The approach of Beuys is very different. He also does not believe, like many of his contemporaries, that art has a certain truth, or that art history is moving towards a certain progress. We are not going anywhere in a way. But for him, what important is that we will be able, through the museum, to see and understand what already happened in order to create something new, which is, according to Beuys, something which is truly alive. According to my understanding, the way in which Beuys looked at the museum is a certain parody of modernism or of the obsession with the new. Because the new as such is not what is really important. So if the only things that we are looking for is for something which is not there in the museum, so on display of the new is actually meaningless, and it's not so useful, and it's not really what is happening nowadays, according to my humble understanding. The idea is, if modernism rejected the connection between art and literature, art and representation, with all the difficulties that those questions are bringing, there is no doubt about this. I think that nowadays many artists try again, not even since the 60s I would say, try again to bring meaning into their visual creation. Not to push meaning away, but to try to find a certain, something to speak about in a very simple way. If you go further with this kind of approach, you can also view modern art as something which actually, at a certain point, yields a certain meaning, a certain discursive input into the discourse of art. So even that is not free from the idea of meaning. So when Kandinsky created these abstract canvases, he brought a certain meaning to the picture. It was not only a composition. He was saying something about painting. In the end of the day, that whole exercise of abstraction and aesthetics and so on and so forth, I think became, I don't know, it unified itself. And what artists are looking nowadays, the way in which they are approaching the new is to push the new aside and bring the meaning, which brings again something new. Because the meaning is only possible if you are pronouncing something new. So.
Yes.
Yeah, first of all, really thank you so much for organizing this. And I really feel like I teach in the School of Arts and Aesthetics. I really feel the whole crisis in a real sense. Because many times we feel that we don't have language to speak, we don't have methodology to teach, we don't have method to interact with the materials. So I think the crisis is really genuine and real. I have some of the questions, not I will say exactly the questions, some of the concerns and comments. I think in this whole discussion there was I would say kinds of things to mix the categories. Like the category of new and newness are completely two different categories in my sense. Newness is, I would say, new is a condition, new is a kind of conditionality, while newness can happen, it's a kind of happenings that can rarely happens. So I think if you are going to mix both these categories, then, and this precisely happens in interdisciplinary kinds of understanding, that we tend to mix many categories and that leads to more misunderstanding, I will say. Second, I would have comment or Milind, definitely understand this whole dichotomy of, I would say dichotomy of the kind category of sacred and open. Then the whole question of then how we are going to put the minimal, and you are putting kinds of minimal with kinds of in a frame of the sacred. But I think there is also a kinds of new configurations that are happening. Now then if you are thinking sacred is a kind of closure, and a kind of sacred that is a kind of minimal, then and if you are thinking the larger political configuration, then sacred does not remain sacred, sacred is becoming more open. Sacred is becoming more like it's giving more kinds of openings. So it does not configuring in the same ways, I would say. And I think how we are going to think about if you're putting this kind of category say sacred, again sacred, open, and new. New, I would say, is a kind of again language of the kinds of opening. Either you take new in a kinds of, I would say, sociological category, or new as a kind of literary category, and newness is a kind of aesthetic categories. Then also it's all about opening. Then how we are going to match these kinds of configurations. And also I think that we also need to think about this whole idea of what is the maximum of the minimum, and what is the minimum of the maximum. Both need to if you I will give you an example of Sakar. He was a theatre personality who used to practice very minimal kind of theatre. But he was trying to create his minimum. But there are you also have a kind of a folk performances where people in a very limited materials try to maximize the performances. So what I was suggesting about the thinking about the maximum of the minimal and minimum of the maximum, and I think many times this category becomes quite redundant in the kinds of practices. And thanks Rakesh Pandey for bringing out this whole idea of the David Sulman and more than I really love that book, and I think that's quite heartbreaking in that side, thinking about the imagination in South Asia. But the question would be if you take Bodhi, and Bodhi will say that when we don't have that world of representation, when the world of representation has completely changed, we have completely different kinds of configuration, then how we are going to think in the same way? And can we think in the same way? So these are the questions I would like to pose. And also one small comment. So if you are thinking new in kinds of you are saying that new becomes a kind of empty shell, then I think that is the best way new can emerge. In theatre, when we say that it is becoming an empty space, then that is the best space for creativity. So I don't know how you are reading it, but if you are thinking in terms of how new is becoming a kind of empty, whether you are saying empty in different terms, but if you are saying empty in I would say very ontological sense, then I think that is the best new can provide us. Thank you so much.
I would like to say something about this new business, because he is monopolizing the business of new in art. I think this is an old question in all spheres of human activity, also in poetry. Let's take the term avant-gardism. That's a more relevant term for me. When sometime in the beginning of the century, 20th century, Apollinaire, the great French avant-garde poet, said he brought out a book called Alcous, and the very first poem was consumed, and the very first line was, in the end you are tired of this ancient world. It was an iconic line of poetry in 20th century. And then he goes on to describe things which are actually modern and European. So he's not going to Roman or Greek times. And basically he was mixing up things where the Eiffel Tower also is an ancient symbol to him. You know, kind of this was considered a marvel of modern technology, etc. So in those days, the Dada, the expressionist, the surrealist later, these were the movements that had also a certain result of a certain cultural formula, not just a response to market demand or kind of a clear growth or competitiveness. And they had serious historical and social and even political background. In poetry, let me jump ahead to Second World War. When Adorno threw a very famous question, it's a very famous question that he said, that after Auschwitz, is poetry possible? How can you write poetry? It will be a very hard task. It will be inhuman to write poetry after Auschwitz. Now this question was taken up, I must say very bravely, by the post-war Polish poets. And this is one of the greatest poetry of the 20th century, the post-war Polish poetry. And this is a country which almost lost 1/3 or 1/4 of it in the Second World War. The kind of a slaughter and the genocides that happened there. One of the poets among these great poets was Tadeusz Różewicz. Różewicz lost his own brother, who was killed, cast up on the street, which he suspects might have seen that killing. People were seeing killing all the time, and he later recalls that might have been my brother. Now, these whole generation of Polish poets like Wisława Szymborska, Tadeusz Różewicz, Zbigniew Herbert, even Miłosz, they actually embarked to answer this question in their own way. And what they did with language, they virtually washed it off with all the nuances, all its vibrancy, brought it to the very basic element. They virtually rediscovered the alphabet and then started from there. That sort of an approach on the part of poetry, poets, it created some of the greatest poetry of the century, but it was a kind of an attempt to recalibrate language and recalibrate the ethics, the morality, all the great moral questions, to repose them. And a great act of confrontation as well as introspection. I would like to read just one poem by Tadeusz Różewicz. It's called Survivor. And this might be about some real incident, just immediately after the war. It's called Survivor. And since you talked about minimalism and read the Shubha's poem in that context, this well fits into that. I am 24. I am 24. I am 24. Led to slaughter, I survived. The following are empty synonyms: man and beast, love and hate, friend and foe, darkness and light. The way of killing man and beast is the same. I have seen it, truckfuls of choked up men who will not be saved. Ideas are mere words, virtue and crime, truth and lies, beauty and ugliness, courage and cowardice. Virtue and crime weigh the same. I have seen it in a man who was both criminal and virtuous. I seek a teacher and a master May He restore my sight, hearing and speech. May He again name objects and ideas. May He separate darkness from light. I am 24, led to slaughter. I survive. This was a poetry of great moral regeneration of its time. Now, this is what I would call newness, though there is nothing new about it. It's almost going back to the basics.
Warming up is becoming more informal now.
I just spoke about it regarding how do you explain how do you explain the idea of difference without difference? You took it from Kierkegaard's.
Always took it from Kierkegaard.
Okay. So you were explaining it with respect to artwork, art, and meaning. Can you a little bit say something?
Yeah, I will try at least. When he's speaking about Christ, that he's making a separation between the new and the different. The difference and new. So when